Today, in this part number 18 about Gog and Magog, let's focus on the final part of the prophecy. Towards where is everything pointing at? If you followed the colloquium that we had just yesterday, you will see to where it is going very clearly. But now it is convenient to see the news that are occurring today, of that relation between Russia and Israel, evidently associated with other countries, of course. But look where it's all heading to. Well, today is only going to be on news. Of news about that relation that is being forged. Every day that goes by, even more tense between Russia and Israel. We will do a run-through during these conferences that have to do with this, with the current relationship between Russia and Israel, that is tensing so much, and that mostly has begun since the war in Ukraine. Look, this news is from the 23rd of April of last year, 2021. Russia deploys troops 8 kilometers from the Israeli Golan. Russia has quietly moved its troops to a point in southern Syria that lies 8 kilometers from the Israeli Golan border, in the face of Israeli objections, Debka has reported exclusively. Moscow used the Islamic riots on the Temple Mount and the diplomatic crisis between Israel and Jordan to cover its deployment of troops progressively near Syria's borders with Israel and Jordan. Notice when all of this started to get tense. Yes, it is true that in 2018 and 2019 they were already talking about a plane that Russia blamed the Israeli forces to have taken it down, but the situation has been going worse, and these are the circumstances. Islamic riots on the Temple Mount, where the third temple of Jerusalem is going to be built with all that it implies, and we know that it will be as a consequence of this war that has started and that will grow bigger, and also this tense situation between Israel and Jordan that still has not crossed the line. It is still just tension. It still holds, and it has to hold because, as you know, they are allies with the King of the North, United States. Therefore, it looks like the situation is a rope being tightened by pulling on each end, and the circumstances were used so as the Russians could move their troops, you can see where, to Syria, to that location where there is conflict as well, so they can get closer to that place, to the Israeli Golan. This Tuesday, July 15th, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, and Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot visited the Bashan Division headquarters in the Golan Heights for a briefing on the Russian deployment just opposite. Debka military sources report that around 800 Russian soldiers are facing Israel, and another 400 are stationed on the Jordanian border. They have established a blockade east of Quneitra, 8 kilometers from the Israeli positions on the Golan. They have also put up 4 or 6 additional checkpoints, some of them 13 kilometers from Israeli military positions, along the 64-kilometer Syrian-Israeli border, from Mount Hermon in the north to a point south of Quneitra in the south. Most of the Russian troops were recruited from Chechnya, Dagestan and Ingushetia, republics known for their Muslim extremist activity. How interesting, right? Curiously, places of Muslim extremism, but Russia has recruited troops from there, for them, and to go, you can see where. Interesting, so Muslim extremism being Russian troops and taken to a point which is the center of Judaism, and also so important for the Christian world, the areas of Israel, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. It makes you think, eh? Military sources report that on Monday, July 24th, Moscow announced the Russian deployment after carrying it out through messages to Washington, Jerusalem and Amman. According to the announcement of Colonel Sergei Rudskoy, head of the General Directorate of Operations of the Russian General Staff, the Russian units were already in place on July 21st and 22nd. We informed our colleagues in the United States, Jordan and Israel through military diplomatic channels in advance of the deployment of Russian-controlled forces around the perimeter of the dequalification zone in southern Syria, he wrote. And now, another news. Some time has gone by. It is the 24th of February of this year 2022. Russia condemns Israel for annexation of the Golan Heights. Yes, it is about the same territory. Moscow questioned Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights and Jerusalem just before its attack on Ukraine. Fancy that, eh? Russia does not recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which is part of Syria. Russia's deputy ambassador, Dmitry Polyansky, told the United Nations Security Council in New York, which held a debate Wednesday on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The UNSC's monthly meeting took place while the UN General Assembly was debating the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. More information about the war between Ukraine and Russia. Polyansky was speaking just hours after Israel broke its neutrality in the conflict by winking in support of Ukraine. Notice what a most interesting moment, just when Israel announces that it supports who? Ukraine. But the thing is that we have already seen that quite some months before there was already a situation that was going in this way, before the war broke out. Do we realize how these things are prepared with time and they do not happen from one day to another? Moscow has portrayed itself in its conflict with Ukraine as a supporter of the Russian-speaking population in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine. At the UN Security Council, Russia reminded Israel that it stands by Syria, where it is entrenched militarily, regarding Damascus's demand that Israel return the Golan Heights, which the IDF captured during the defensive war of 6 days in 1967. Of course, Russia is on the side of whom? Of Syria. They see that this territory, which is of Syria, is occupied since the War of 6 Days. Well, if there is anyone that does not know of this, or is very young and has not heard of the War of 6 Days in 1967, it would be good to look for data to see that there is history that is needed to be known, because these are the consequences of all of that happened already in those days. And what do you know? What does this all do? The war in Ukraine comes, and the situation gets even worse between them. Look, it continues saying, although Israel annexed the Golan in 1981, the United States is the only country that recognizes that sovereignty. Interesting. The union once again between Israel and United States. In December, the cabinet approved an NIS 1 billion plan to expand Israel's population on the Golan, including by creating 2 new cities, therefore take more Jewish people to that area, so as to live there. Polyansky recalled that decision, stating that Russia was concerned by Tel Aviv's announced plans to expand settlement activity in the occupied Golan Heights, which contradicts the provisions of the 1949 Geneva Convention. He also indirectly took issue with Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem, including West Jerusalem. Wow. In 2017, Moscow said it recognized West Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Well, look at that, right? But on Wednesday he appeared to ignore that acknowledgement, using Tel Aviv as a synonym for the government of Israel. It is a name used only by countries that do not recognize Israeli sovereignty over any part of their capital. Well, see how everything is complicating, and also how what is at stake is Jerusalem. More news. This was of the 2nd of March of this year 2022. Israel rejects Ukraine's repeated arms request. Well, it was all keeping in a certain balance. Israel has rejected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's request to supply his country with weapons, according to a report by Yedioth Aharonoth. The request came during a phone conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Friday. See that now it is not Netanyahu but Bennett, although now they are in elections and we will see if Netanyahu comes back, and it all points out to that, with everything that it can imply. Remember what we have already presented about this. However, Israel has announced that 2 plane loads of humanitarian aid for Ukraine will fly to Poland today. Senior US officials have told Israel that the United States would welcome its supply of weapons to Ukraine, according to the newspaper. However, Israel is reluctant to take a position that would anger Russia, given the security coordination between Moscow and Tel Aviv regarding Israeli attacks on Iranian targets in Syria. This is drawing criticism from Israeli leaders within Israel itself and in the United States. Quite some complications, right? Yesterday, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid announced that Israel would support a motion to condemn Russia at the UN, but the paper quoted an Israeli official as saying, "Everyone understand that this is too little too late, and that we should do much more. Countries with much to lose are taking a clear line. Germany reversed a decision that was among its strict principles and decided to provide Ukraine with lethal weapons. Only Israel, which always tries to remind others that not stood by him, or the Jewish people in dark times, although he has the ability to at least contribute to the Ukraine defense, which is doing anything to do nothing." Senior Israeli officials said Ukraine has increased its requests for military equipment and intelligence from Israel in the past year. Israel did not respond to most of these requests due to the sensitivity of the Jewish community, as well as the need to coordinate operations with Russia in Syria. Yedioth Aharonoth noted that a high-ranking Ukrainian delegation made one of these requests during a visit to Israel last August. The delegation requested a meeting with representatives of Elbit and aerospace industries to purchase drones, some of which have offensive capabilities, but the Israeli authorities did not approve such contacts. Ukraine has bought military drones from Turkey that are being used in the current war. How interesting also, because you can see how Ukraine asks Israel to support with certain drones that have what? Offensive capabilities. To be used as what? As weapons. And this in what date? Last August. And last August, was there a war between Ukraine and Russia? This is August of 2021 we are talking about. No. So then, notice once more, things do not happen from one day to another. Everything is prepared beforehand, and the governments evidently know it. A different thing is that the population does not know anything. But there are people in the elite that know too well what is happening. Well, having said this, we can see here that Israel is trying to tread very carefully so as to not make Russia angry. Well, now look, this news is from the 16th of March of this year 2022. Russia uses Iranian presence on the Golan Heights to warn Israel about supporting Ukraine. Well, setting the standards, right? And you can see here an image with Israeli soldiers together with soldiers of the United States. Russia has been using the presence of Iranian-backed militias in southern Syria, particularly near the occupied Golan Heights, to pressure Israel to support Western opposition to the invasion of Ukraine. Local media reported that on March the 12th, for example, Russia conducted a patrol of Iranian military vehicles on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. Military analyst Brigadier General Assad al-Zubi was quoted in the media as saying that by allowing the Iranians to come close to the border, Russia has sent a warning to Israel, which occupies the Golan Heights. Basically, the Israeli government is being told not to side with the United States if the Biden administration decides to intervene in the Ukrainian war. See, that they are allowing the Iranians to get closer to the border of Israel, hey? Yes, Russia is allowing all of this. All of this so they can tell them, if you go on the side of the United States and do what they say, you can see what awaits you. We will allow Iran to go against you. And supported by Russia, of course. Al-Zubi noted that Iran and its militias cannot move without Russia's prior consent. We will see now in a bit who is this Al-Zubi. Russian-Iranian coordination, he added, takes place 24 hours a day in Syria. How interesting. So Iran does not move any pieces if Russia does not give its consent. According to the analyst, Russian officials have been meeting with Iranian leaders in Syria since the first day of the invasion of Ukraine and have informed them that Russia's air defense systems will provide protection for all its militias. Yes, yes, the Russians protecting who? The Iranians. And in Syria. Russian-Iranian coordination has become evident in Syria, Al-Zubi explained. Russia took into account some Arab countries to get what it wanted and misled them into thinking that it was against the Iranian militias and that it was working to drive them out. However, today Russia cannot hide from the world its criminality, brutality and support for terrorist systems. These are quite some declarations. It should be noted that Iran has been working for years to strengthen its forces in southern Syria. And what will that be for? Well, and there is still more. Who is Asad al-Zubi? Asad al-Zubi, born in 1956, is a Sunni Free Syrian Army general who defected from the Syrian army to the FSA. He joined Syria's Air Force Academy in 1974, graduating in 1977 with the rank of lieutenant, and then rose through the ranks to become a brigadier general. He also worked as a military consultant in Yemen for more than 2 years. He currently holds a leading position in the Southern Front. Before his defection, he served in the Syrian Arab Air Force and was head of the Air Force branch of the Supreme Syrian Military Academy. In January 2016, al-Zubi was named head of the opposition delegation team to the Third Geneva Conference on the Future of Syria. Well, we are seeing that there are people that have moved between several ambits and in the end do a series of declarations that are quite shocking. And that evidently means that there will be decision making as well. Look at this. Russian troops patrolling the Syrian side of the Golan Heights on the Israeli border. It says, notice the Z. As you know, these vehicles that have the Z on them, well, you know where they are from. Well, yes, they are Russian troops, and on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. This is very close to Israel, very close. Now, attention to this news. Israel prepares for Gog and Magog war. A few days ago, Israeli television openly broadcast a map where, according to them, a new military and political bloc would be forming with the intention of attacking Israel. This media picked up the news, and here is the map in question. Well, look. This map would be based on the prophecies of Ezekiel, who in his books 38 and 39 warns about the coming of 2 wars before the last war, and that it would break out in the Holy Land, and that it would have Israel and the Muslim countries as its main protagonists. This map would be divided on one side by the defenders of Israel, who would be the United States, Great Britain, France and Germany, and on the other by its enemies such as Iran, Russia, China, Syria and North Korea. Wow. But it is not only the press that has shown its concern about this fact. The Israeli government in its official media has also shown its concern about the military movements that are taking place in its border areas and the lack of support that this country is receiving from countries like Russia and China to control a possible threat to its territory. Furthermore, Israel has warned that it will initiate and strengthen its position in the Middle East precisely because the situation clearly appears to be one of direct conflict seeking. Well, well, well. And these are news that have appeared not so long ago in Israel. It makes you think, doesn't it? Can we see where this is all going? Yes, we have seen the importance of Russia in all this situation, in what has to do with Gog and Magog, and we are seeing and have already seen how there are countries associated and implied with Russia or allied to Russia to work with certain objectives. The same thing that we are seeing with the United States and its allies on the other side. And what has started in Ukraine, we have seen it, and we have shown it also in the colloquium that we had just yesterday about Gog and Magog, how there is a country in between, in the middle of Russia and Israel, that is having a very important role in this, but that is in a very dangerous area, and that is Turkey. And now what do you know? We are showing clearly which are those objectives that you can see coming from a mile away. And this has not been seen from only a mile away. This is from many, many years ago, when Ezekiel wrote those fragments that we can see today, as marked in the chapters 38 and 39. Do we realize how the prophecy is preparing for its fulfillment, and that there are people that know it, and others that are not aware of anything, neither want to be aware? Unfortunately, we know what Satan is going to do with all of this. It will be the cause with everything that is going to come, so that the third temple of Jerusalem will be lifted, the place where the center of peace in the world is going to be, the place where the Vatican will want to be, and where the Pope at that time will settle, and the place where Satan will appear as if he were Christ, and will sit in that throne as if he were God, as if he were Christ. What the papacy has done, supplanting Christ in his mediating role for so many years, as was also prophesied, will finally culminate beside the very Antichrist par excellence. If the Antichrist is the papal system from the beginning of its history, who would be the Antichrist in capital letters? Satan, when he appears himself as if he were Jesus. And together there they will try for a while the great harmony and the beginning of the millennium so longly waited for. 1,000 years of peace on the earth, with Christ reigning and everyone in the world so happy. But that is going to last nothing, because everything is going to blow up. After comes Armageddon. And if we are not aware of all of this, we do not know what is coming to us. And if we do not know when Christ is coming back in truth in 2031, we do not know anything to be able to position its thing in its place in the chronological line of the historic prophecy of this world. The end is near, and the last of the prophecies are to be fulfilled. And those chapters 40 and onwards of the book of Ezekiel are the ones that Satan will use, where there it talks about a temple to do the nearly perfect plagiarism, but that will be used to tangle up the whole world, making them believe that it is truly God's will for the world, when those prophecies could not be applied anymore, because the Jewish nation did not do as God's will. And now the world that is falling where it should not, in the great deception, they will be completely deceived, and will only have one enemy in common, the Lord's true people that remain faithful to his commandments and to the testimony of Jesus Christ. The rest will all fall. But we know that there will be many Jews that will know the message of the fourth angel and react, and they will be the most powerful at the moment of preaching the final message, the one of the fourth angel. Yes, and there is not long for that to happen. From now on, what we must do from now on is continue saying things so that when it happens they believe. Many are believing already when they see that what we said so many years ago is already preparing, and what we had said before all of this started, now it is in front of our eyes also. Therefore, it is about time that we position ourselves, that we accept the truth and set aside our prejudices and preconceptions, because salvation is at stake, and our salvation is personal and untransferable. We are going to continue still with more news on the matter, on that relation between Russia and Israel, because you are going to see how all this situation is getting. And definitely we must be vigilant to the signs of the times as the Adventist pioneers were. And now, more than ever, Maranatha 2031, the Lord returns when it's time. May God bless you.